The cool jazz tunes in Bellingen's main street last night rivalled New Orleans. The street party was one of the highlights of the festival, which has seen 57 musicians and a dozen bands perform at venues all around the town. Only in its sixth year, the Bellingen Festival has earned a reputation as one of the country's leading jazz showcases, drawing an audience ready to show its appreciation. The 1995 festival has attracted some of the country's premier acts, including the Catholics just returned from a European tour.
Artistically, we have 12 of the very best bands that you'd find anywhere in the world.
Today's warm weather provided the perfect opportunity for fans to soak up the rays and the rhythm by the water. Organisers say next year's festival will be even bigger.
We'll have new plans for next year, improve on what we've already done, fix up the little faults that we may have. It'll be better.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
The early fireworks didn't eventuate, but there was still plenty of intensity, with nerves getting the better of even the most experienced. It was left to another Bulldogs veteran playing possibly his last game to post first points. A minor altercation allowed Williams to extend the margin by 2, while the guile of Linane was proving decisive for Curry. They appeared to go further ahead in the 17th minute, only to have referee Williams disallow the try. But there was no doubt 8 minutes later on the opposite flank, Linane and Williams combining for Hughes. West appeared to be having one of those days, while Brian Robb kicked the Premiers to a 12-0 lead at the break. West failed to take advantage of the stiff breeze, and with the scent of a hat-trick of titles, Curry's quest gained momentum with tries in the 52nd and 63rd minutes, the latter securing a 22-0 advantage and the championship. The Rosellas scored a belated try through Jamie Greenaway, but the Bulldogs couldn't be denied, joining West, Maitland and Lakes as the only other clubs to capture 3 successive titles. In lower grades, Lakes and West were victorious. In Group 21, Scone beat Singleton, while Wyong defeated the entrants in the major semi on the Central Coast.
Protests like this one at Newcastle University were held at campuses across the country. This soup kitchen was set up to draw attention to the inadequacies of Oz Study as a means of income support for tertiary students.
If the government is to fulfil its stated policy of having a clever country, then it has to put its money where its mouth is and fund the education sector. At the moment, students are being pushed out simply because they can't afford to study.
Also of concern, the proposed changes to requirements for AusStudy and HECS for permanent residents. Anyone who hasn't become an Australian citizen within 3 years of taking up permanent residency will not be eligible for AusStudy, and they'll have to pay their university HECS fees up front.
It's just morally wrong to force somebody into becoming a citizen of a country. If people want to do it, they'll do it of their own free will, and they shouldn't be forced into economic blackmail.
The changes were announced in the federal budget, but the legislation is yet to be passed through Parliament. A National Day of Action is planned on Thursday. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Hunter Valley residents could have been forgiven for thinking summer had come early. The unseasonal heatwave arrived with a vengeance yesterday, with the mercury hitting the 30-degree mark at Jerry's Plains. It was only a few degrees cooler in the lower Hunter. The blast of hot weather continued today, with the Williamtown weather station recording a top of 30, breaking the all-time August record of 29.6 degrees in 1954. It was also hot in Newcastle, with Maryville recording a maximum of 29. The top temperature in the upper Hunter was 28 degrees at Scone. By midweek, the weather could be even hotter. However, Newcastle has fared slightly better than Sydney in rainfall, with Nobby's recording 2.2 millimetres in the past 7 weeks.
Our average for August in this signal station over the last 10 years has been around about 72, 73 millimetres for the month. So that's extremely small rainfall.
The region's last serious dry spell was recorded in 1970, when 0.6 of a millimetre fell over 46 days. With no cool change in sight, at least one council, Port Stephens, might bring forward the introduction of the bushfire period to the beginning of next month. Other Hunter Valley councils could follow Port Stephens' lead. Katrina Hines for NBN News.
Since returning 7 aircraft to supply company Jetstream Aircraft Limited last month, Impulse has been operating flights from Williamtown using its fleet of Beech aircraft. Unhappy with the performance of 5 J41 turboprop aircraft and 2 HS748s, it also cancelled an order for a further 5 J41s. 11 staff, including pilots, were cut. 12 return flights from Newcastle to Melbourne each week were axed. Accusing Jetstream, a subsidiary of British Aerospace, of misrepresenting its aircraft capabilities, Impulse is claiming damages in the federal court. Another legal wrangle between the two companies involves the repayment of a $5 million loan acquired during the purchase of an aviation maintenance company. Impulse spokesperson Ian Dawson today said Impulse was continuing to trade strongly. Subject to government licences, the company was looking to increase services out of Newcastle, which may see a return of the Newcastle to Melbourne flights. Impulse Airlines will present its case before a federal court judge early next month. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Jackson spent this season with the Rabbitohs but is expected to sign a 3-year contract with the Knights in the next few days. Both parties coming to an amicable arrangement.
Well, we've come to a compromise. He's actually agreed to drop a considerable amount of his contract money.
Meantime, the Knights have made 2 changes from Friday's loss to the Reds. Darren Tracy returns to the starting side, with Tony Butterfield expected to undergo a fitness test later in the week on an injured ankle. In the backs, Robbie Ross returns to fullback after his 2-week suspension. Teenager Owen Craigie dropping back to reserves after earning praise from the coach.
I wouldn't have liked to have thrust Owen into a task like he would have against Cronulla with his limited experience.
The season of Ashley Gordon may have come to a premature end. Under competition rules, he has not played enough second-grade games to qualify for the reserve semi-finals campaign. The Knights have not given up hope, naming him on the second-grade bench, and are tonight seeking a clarification from the league.
There's tracks everywhere. There's people walking their dogs and blokes walking.
The controversy centres on an application by the Newcastle Netball Association to borrow $250,000 from Newcastle City Council. The money would be used to rebuild the administration block at National Park. Even though their request was only for a loan, a majority of Newcastle councillors last night voted to give them the money. Councillor Greg Hansen was furious about the decision.
What I said was that it was bordering on corruption. Now, I don't think anyone is being personally corrupt, but I think politically it is corrupt to take ratepayers' money and spend it like this just out from an election.
Greg Hansen says normally when a grant is approved, it's subject to more rigorous budget considerations.
This thing, 3 weeks out from an election, is brought in urgently as a Lord Mayoral minute without any notice to the councillors, apart from those that had been spoken to, obviously, and pushed through.
The Lord Mayor has defended the council's decision, saying that the building and land are council-owned, and the association agreed to contribute $100,000 to the project. He says Hansen's allegations about corruption are disgraceful.
Because it's totally unfounded, and to be raising that sort of an issue when he knows that it's incorrect.
Even so, the Lord Mayor says he will report the matter to the Independent Commission Against Corruption. He says when someone alleges corruption, he's required to report it. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Today's high temperatures and strong winds gave other Lake Macquarie firefighters a hint of what's to come this summer. Crews were called out to a spate of blazes throughout the afternoon. This fire at Belmont burnt out hectares of grass and scrubland on the old John Darling colliery site. Brigade officers monitored the fire but were content to let it go, saying it would help consume the build-up of fuel on the ground to reduce the local bushfire hazard in the coming summer months. Firefighters were also mopping up late today at Cardiff after another fire swept across an area of grassland at Moneybung Road, threatening the nearby Cardiff industrial estate. Ian Cameron, NBN News.
The Tillagary Peninsula is koala country, and locals are hoping to keep it that way. Today, the member for Port Stephens, Bob Martin, announced this 400-hectare site between Saltash and Lemon Tree Passage will be rezoned from Rural 1A to 7K Environmental Protection, a move believed to be a state first.
This is a big move for New South Wales koala. It means it's the first where we're able to protect them at a very high standard and go forward.
It's ironic that Bob Martin is also the State Minister for Mineral Resources, and this move effectively blocks sand mining in the zone. Any form of development has to be koala friendly.
We're looking at probably a colony of somewhere around about 100 koalas on the Tilligary Peninsula.
Port Stephens Council and National Parks and Wildlife also worked on this zoning. The koala carers say all politicians should take note. As seen in the recent Queensland election, koala politics can have electoral significance.
Peter Brown was left with no doubt that his attackers meant business. He has a severely bruised arm after he tried to stop a man hitting him across the head with a baseball bat. Peter was working in his shop on Prospect Road when two men came through the door at around 8 o'clock last night.
Two guys in a crouched position come running into the shop in behind the counter, and by the time I turned around to face them, one of them hit me with a baseball bat over the arm, and then forced me to open the till, which I did. Then took me out to the back to where the safe is and got money out of the safe as well.
The men are thought to be aged around 18. They gave Peter no time to react. Although his arm is very sore, he believes he could have been injured far worse.
I was a bit worried. They had a baseball bat and some form of a spike, like a metal spike or a wooden spike or something. They were waving at me.
The main attacker is tall and has long dark hair. He was wearing a black overcoat and blue jeans.
Attracting general practitioners to work in rural Australia is proving difficult. Despite the scenery and lifestyle, it seems also hard to entice them to work at places like Nelson Bay. Two GPs in the region want to expand their medical practices. However, after advertising for 2 years, neither has managed to find a doctor to take either job. Dr Graham Choate, a spokesperson for the Nelson Bay GPs, believes the reason is simple.
I guess most medical graduates these days want to stay in the city.
Dr Choate says while Nelson Bay is better off than some places, the doctor shortage still places stress on local GPs. Dr Helen Tolhurst says Newcastle University is dealing with the issue by trying to enrol more medical students from rural areas.
One of the indicators that young doctors will go to rural areas is that they've actually come from a rural area themselves.
Dr Tolhurst also believes new medical graduates should be encouraged to spend time in the country.
I think a lot of young doctors feel that if they go away to a rural area, they'll have some difficulty getting back into the teaching hospital system.
Dr Tolhurst says going to the country should be seen as a plus. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It was a vicious attack which has left 87-year-old Lily Austin with a fractured pelvis and severe leg injuries. Mrs Austin was walking to her sister's house when a 2.5-year-old German Shepherd Kelpie Cross from a house in Northcote Street, Aberdare, attacked her. Driving instructor Graham Slade saw Mrs Austin stumbling in the gutter.
It appears that the dog had made an attack to her, that's why she was wobbly on her feet, and then had a second go at her. And when she went to the ground, that's when I jumped out of the truck because I thought it may have come out of while she was laying on the ground.
Graham was held by neighbour Michelle Hindmarsh, who fought the dog off with a broom.
I don't know which one occurred first, but both her ankles were chewed in pretty well and the back of her knee. So I bandaged up a knee and one of the ankles, and the lady across the road done the other one.
Mrs. Austin made the short walk to her sister's place almost every day, and according to her family and friends, she often spoke of how frightened she was of the dog.
A couple of times he's come out and raced at her and then gone back inside.
The animal was this afternoon put down. Police say the owner, who still has another dog tied in the unfenced yard, will be charged. Mrs. Austin was operated on today. She's in a serious condition.
It's a matter of whether she can recover. We'll try to help her, but being 87, she's got a little bit of an uphill battle.
Jodie McKay, NBN News. The government first called for submissions on the Barrington Wilderness proposal in 1993. Now it is again seeking the public's opinion. Yesterday it announced it would gazette 38,000 hectares, most of which is national park, protecting it from all human activity except bushwalking. But there's no word on whether 23,000 hectares of state forest will be declared wilderness. The government says it's waiting on the results of an interim forest assessment, which won't be completed until at least May next year. The Wilderness Society is outraged at the delay.
Under the Wilderness Act, only one community consultation is necessary. Bob Carr's obviously trying to head off a purported sort of industry backlash.
But the National Parks and Wildlife Service today said it was a necessary step. Last time 7,500 submissions were received, more against the proposal than for.
Quite a few things probably have changed in that time. We have new neighbours in the area. There are probably new people who use the area now who didn't use it in the past, and this is an opportunity for them to make comment.
It's expected the official gazetting of the national park as a wilderness area could happen at the end of the year. Regional Manager Bob Conroy says the land will then become a high management priority.
Our attention will be turned to that area, as I said before, so that in 100 years and 200 years' time, the area will essentially be the same as it is today.
The board will meet to discuss last Sunday fortnight's decision at Harker Oval. The agenda is also likely to include the future of Bob Ferris, who, if West do drop out of Super League, will have a conflict of interest. Ferris currently holds the dual role of manager of West and of the Mariners. Part owner of the franchise, Jeff McCloy, today said the Mariners will remain in Newcastle whatever happens tomorrow night, and denied rumours of a move to Melbourne. To motocross, and local Craig Anderson left for Europe today to contest the donations considered the Olympics of the sport. The 17-year-old is one of 3 Australians to take part, along with 33 other countries. And in surfing, the Hunter Institute's Tani Horridon will be one of the favourites for the national youth titles in Newcastle later this year, following state and regional wins in the last week.
It's taken a month for the Fairhall to travel from Italy on board the first of 6 mine hunters for the Royal Australian Navy. It was an impressive sight as it came into Newcastle Harbour, which will be the mine hunters' home for the next 2 years as it's fitted out. While that's occurring, ADI will be working on the remaining 5 vessels.
By bringing one in, we were able to not only complete the facility, but we're also able to do all the planning, to do the detailed design that's needed here in Newcastle.
On hand to watch it come through the heads, the man who's overseeing the project for the Navy. It will take possession of the first mine hunter midway through 1988, with all 6 delivered by the year 2002.
I think it'll significantly enhance the capability of the Royal Australian Navy. As the advertisement says, ton for ton, I think they'll be the best mine hunter in the world.
Over the next 2 days, the shell will be lifted off the ship using the huge cranes on board. It will be floated and taken by tug to ADI's Carrington facility, where it will be placed on rails and lifted out of the water. But all this depends on the weather. ADI is hoping the northwest winds will ease overnight so it can start manoeuvring the shell early tomorrow morning. Jodie McKay, NBN News. It took the thieves just 3 minutes to rob the Belmont Sportsman's Club. They smashed a hole through the front window and climbed through, setting off the first alarm at 2:31 this morning. As they entered the poker machine area, another 3 alarms were activated. They then used a sledgehammer to smash open 15 poker machine trays, stealing hundreds of $1 coins.
We've only just recently put in full sensor light system around the club, which is in good working order. We have full security from Wormel Security, and we have chains and padlocks on the doors to stop them coming through the front doors, and we still have them coming in. And it's very difficult to stop them when they're so quick.
Police say one of the thieves was injured by broken glass. They found a trail of blood in the poker machine area, indicating a deep cut on either his hand or arm. They believe he may have received treatment at a local medical centre. The raid on the Sporties Club came just an hour and a half after a similar attempt at the Hexham Bowling Club. There, though, the thieves fled empty-handed. In the last month, these 8 clubs have been broken into. Police are sure the same gang is responsible. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
As a prelude to the big day, about 300 players and supporters were at the Group 21 presentations in Muswellbrook last night. The competition is sponsored by Tui's, and the company's Greg Moy praised the strength of rugby league in the Upper Hunter.
It's a great group. There's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of good players come out of this group.
The Player of the Year was Corindai's front rower Jason Allen, who scored more than 20 tries. He was unable to make the presentation. Scone's first grade centre Brad Adams was a popular choice as Rookie of the Year. The Thoroughbreds' hopes will be riding with the 19-year-old against Singleton in Sunday's grand final. It'll be a virtual replay of the major semi-final, won 26-18 by Scone. Scone's been in the competition for 75 years and has won 20 first-grade premierships, a feat equalled only by South Sydney in the ARL.
While it hasn't been the best of seasons for the Rosebud senior teams, the under-21s have a chance to salvage some pride for the club in the decider against Bonnyrigg. Breakers coach John Cosmina will be one of many interested spectators as his club Warringah is engaged in the first grade grand final. Locally, Edgeworth take on Western while Highfields play Wallsend in the semi-finals. It's also grand finals weekend for the Central Coast, with the Coasties creating club history and qualifying for 3 grand finals in the state First Division. Brewers will be looking for a hat-trick of titles in the Newcastle Netball Grand Final tomorrow when they take on Gazzers Sports. It's a replay of last year's premiership decider, but Gazzers have won 2 of their 3 meetings this season. In rugby union, Newcastle's semi-finals continue tomorrow with Singleton taking on the Waratahs for a position in the grand final, while Merewether Carlton play May East on Sunday. And it's the final round of the Newcastle Hockey Premiership. The makeup of the semi-finals still undecided. Uni has secured top spot with South, West, Maitland and North all vying for the remaining positions.
While gentle diplomacy seems to have failed, Bob Brown has gone and dropped his own bombshell against the French nuclear tests.
If anyone's hurt there, they'll be Black Islanders. So that's a grubby element of racism, which to my mind is overwhelmingly part of this whole sorry episode.
At a news conference this afternoon, Mr Brown and member for Patterson Bob Horn and state member for Swansea Jill Hall confirmed they will fly to Papeete in Tahiti to join a mass protest against the tests. Plans to send a boat and follow the Greenpeace vessel to the actual test area were cancelled when a suitable craft could not be found in time. Bob Horn will carry an Australian flag in the protest, which is covered in signatures of people opposed to the French moves. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
One, two, three, four, five, 4, 5.
Important that we train up the local people in this needed education so they can take responsibility for restarting lives themselves.